closed his hotel. A serious look crossed her pretty olive-skinned face. From what my foster father tells me, the place is badly run down, and this elderly uncle of mine didn't have the money to modernize it. He wouldn't sell the land, or couldn't, so he just lived there in the caretaker's quarters and let it decay. And now you've inherited the ancient wreck, Rod teased her as he drove around a curve that followed the coast. That's the story, she said. The real estate operator in charge of showing the property to us is also the village lawyer. I imagine he'll be able to give us an idea of what it's worth. I have a thing about old buildings, Rod said. When we get married, I'm going to buy us a 200-year-old farmhouse somewhere. She laughed. Before you do that, you have at least 200 years of work to get finished. It's my guess if we ever marry, it will be a rush ceremony at City Hall, dinner at a really good Italian restaurant, and then back to the theater. Rod looked amused. You might be a prophet, he admitted. They were driving along a stretch of road only about 30 feet from the cliffs. Almost all the buildings were on the inland side of the highway. There weren't many new ones among them. Regina sat silently gazing at the distant ocean, and then she had that first odd feeling of having been there before. I feel I know this place, she said, suddenly looking perplexed. I'm convinced that sometime in the past I walked along these cliffs, along a path closer to the edge of them. Maybe you were here as a child and did walk the cliffs. No, she said, frowning. That's the silly part of it. I've never been near this village before, and yet I somehow feel that I'm coming home. Rod glanced at her. You're dramatizing the situation too much. I don't mean to, she said. It's odd. She said no more to him as they drove on, though the feeling of familiarity in her surroundings continued to press in on her. What's that ahead on the right? Rod asked. She looked and saw an ungainly, rambling gray building perched close to the cliffs. It had a seemingly endless number of porches and was typically Victorian in design. There were towers which looked like minarets and a captain's walk midway between the towers, which must have offered an overwhelming view of the ocean. To the rear there were smaller drab buildings in a cluster which suggested they had been helps' quarters and stables in the hotel's prime. Now the entire scene was deserted. Regina stared ahead as they gradually drove nearer. It's too isolated, she said, and there doesn't seem to be anyone there. Do you suppose the real estate agent got my message right? He's probably somewhere around, Rod said. Or maybe he'll show up later. We may be a little early. I'm glad. I want to take a look around this spooky old place by myself first. She gave him a perplexed smile. You do have a hang-up about old buildings, don't you? I warned you about that. He smiled. This is like something straight out of an Andrew Wyeth painting. They were driving up to a broken-down stone fence, which apparently encircled the hotel property. The rusty iron gates were open, and bronze plaques set on the entrance pillars of stone still proudly announced that this was indeed Woodhurst. Regina frowned. I have that odd feeling again, that I've been out on this high point of land before. Yet the buildings don't touch any familiar chord of memory. And you're sure you never were here when you were a youngster? Positive. You could have been somewhere else like it, Rod suggested. All shore views are somewhat alike. So are cliffs, for that matter. You're confusing this with some other place you've visited. Her expression was thoughtful as she stared out at the distant ocean. Perhaps, she admitted reluctantly, but the haunting impression that she'd known this place well was still upon her. Rod drove the car up to the imposing entrance of the old hotel. Broad wooden steps led up to a veranda that ran all around the building and to huge double-entrance doors on which a padlock showed plainly. He turned off the ignition and stared up at the wide, empty veranda. No question that we got here first, he said. Shall we take a look around? Still confused by her bizarre reaction to the place, she